There comes a moment in every life when the heart asks a difficult question. How much of myself must I lose before I realize I deserve better? We are taught to hold on, to forgive endlessly, to wait a little longer, to believe that love alone can mend every fracture. But not every hand that reaches for you is meant to walk beside you forever. Some people arrive to teach you strength. Others arrive to remind you of your worth by showing you what happens when you forget it. And then there are those whose presence quietly steals your laughter, your confidence, and the peaceful silence you once called home. Happiness is rarely taken from us in a single dramatic moment. More often it disappears one small compromise at a time. It fades when we keep making room for those who never make room for us. It weakens when we mistake familiarity for belonging and sacrifice our peace to preserve relationships that have long stopped nurturing our souls. We convince ourselves that carrying emotional burdens is loyalty, that enduring constant disappointment is love, and that staying where we are unseen somehow proves our strength. Yet the soul knows the truth long before the mind is willing to admit it. The greatest freedom you will ever discover is not found in changing the people around you, but in changing what you are willing to carry. Some doors are meant to close, not because life is punishing you, but because it is preparing a place where your spirit can finally breathe. Releasing the wrong people is not the end of compassion. It is the beginning of wisdom. It is the quiet declaration that your heart is not a battlefield for someone else's confusion, nor a shelter for endless disrespect. It is the gentle courage to believe that peace is not too much to ask for, and that joy should never require you to abandon yourself. Today, we will explore why the path to lasting happiness is often hidden behind the difficult choice of letting go. We will discover that every goodbye to what diminishes your spirit creates space for something that honors it, and that the life waiting for you on the other side of release is richer, lighter, and far more beautiful than the one built on the fear of being alone. Happiness often slips away, not because life is unfair, but because we continue to hold on to people who quietly drain our peace. These are not always people who openly harm us. Sometimes they are individuals whose constant negativity, criticism, manipulation, or emotional inconsistencies slowly becomes a part of our daily lives. At first, we may not even notice the weight they place on our hearts. We excuse their behavior, hoping they will change or believing that our patience will eventually be rewarded. Yet every day spent carrying relationships that leave us exhausted is a day spent moving farther from the happiness we seek. Peace cannot grow where emotional turmoil is constantly invited to stay. Many people believe that letting go of someone means giving up, but in reality, it often means choosing yourself. There is a profound difference between standing by someone during difficult times and allowing yourself to be repeatedly diminished. A healthy relationship may experience conflict, but it also offers respect, understanding, and mutual effort. A draining relationship, however, leaves one person constantly sacrificing while the other continually takes. Over time, this imbalance becomes a silent habit. You begin to question your own worth, apologize for things that are not your fault, and ignore your own needs just to keep someone else comfortable. The cost of maintaining such connections is rarely visible to others, but it is deeply felt within. The wrong people can cloud your vision until you forget what genuine happiness feels like. Their opinions become louder than your own inner voice. Their expectations shape your choices, and their approval becomes something you chase without ever fully receiving. Instead of celebrating your growth, they may resist it because your confidence threatens the version of you they have grown accustomed to controlling. As a result, you shrink your dreams, silence your opinions, and hide parts of yourself simply to avoid conflict. What begins as a desire to preserve a relationship slowly turns into the loss of your authentic self. True happiness requires emotional space, and that space cannot exist when your mind is constantly occupied by stress, disappointment, or anxiety caused by unhealthy relationships. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every day without realizing how much it slows you down. Only when you finally set it aside do you understand how light your steps were always meant to feel. The same is true for the people we allow into our lives. When someone continually fills your days with fear, guilt, or emotional exhaustion, they leave little room for joy, creativity, gratitude, and hope. Letting go is not merely about removing a person. It is about removing the emotional burden that has been preventing your heart from breathing freely. Choosing peace over unhealthy attachment is not selfish. It is one of the greatest acts of self-respect a person can practice. It means recognizing that your emotional well-being matters just as much as anyone else's. It means understanding that love should never require you to abandon your dignity, your confidence, or your peace of mind. Some people will misunderstand your decision, and others may accuse you of changing. But growth always changes us. The person who learns to value inner peace will naturally become more careful about who is allowed to influence their life. As your boundaries become stronger, your happiness becomes less dependent on the behavior of others and more rooted in the quiet confidence that you no longer need to chase acceptance from those who cannot appreciate your worth. Letting go is often misunderstood as an act of anger, rejection, or defeat, but in its truest form, it is an expression of self-respect. It is the quiet realization that your life has value and that your emotional well-being deserves protection. Many people stay in unhealthy relationships because they fear being judged, abandoned, or alone. They convince themselves that enduring constant disappointment is a sign of loyalty. However, there is a significant difference between being compassionate and allowing yourself to be repeatedly hurt. Self-respect begins the moment you recognize that your kindness should never become permission for others to mistreat you. Every healthy relationship is built on mutual care, trust, and consideration. Both people make an effort to listen, understand, and support one another. But when one person constantly gives while the other only takes, the relationship becomes unbalanced. Over time, this imbalance slowly erodes confidence and inner peace. You begin to overlook disrespect because it has become familiar. You lower your expectations to avoid conflict, and eventually you stop asking for the treatment you truly deserve. This gradual acceptance of unhealthy behavior is not strength. It is often a sign that you have forgotten how valuable your own heart is. Choosing to let go does not mean you stop caring about the other person. In many cases, you may still wish them happiness and hope they find healing. What changes is your willingness to sacrifice your own peace for their comfort. You realize that loving someone should never require you to constantly explain your worth, tolerate repeated dishonesty, or carry emotional burdens that do not belong to you. Self-respect teaches you that compassion and boundaries can exist together. You can forgive someone without allowing them continued access to your life. You can care from a distance while protecting the peace you have worked so hard to build. One of the greatest obstacles to letting go is the belief that history should outweigh reality. People often remain attached because they remember who someone used to be, or because they have invested years into the relationship. They hope that if they wait just a little longer, things will return to the way they once were. But happiness cannot be built on memories alone. It must be supported by the choices people make today. A relationship should not survive simply because it has existed for a long time. It should continue because it still nurtures, respects, and uplifts both people involved. Self-respect also requires the courage to accept uncomfortable truths. Sometimes the people you love are simply not capable of giving you the care, honesty, or support you need. Accepting this reality is painful, but denying it only prolongs the suffering. The heart often clings to potential, while wisdom pays attention to patterns. If someone repeatedly shows you through their actions that they do not value your feelings, believe those actions rather than empty promises. Respect is demonstrated consistently, not occasionally. As you begin to honor yourself, your standards naturally rise. You stop chasing people who only appreciate you when it is convenient. You become less willing to argue for basic kindness or seek validation from those who withhold it. Instead, you surround yourself with relationships that encourage your growth, celebrate your successes, and stand beside you during difficult moments. The decision to let go becomes less about rejecting another person and more about embracing the life you deserve. It becomes a declaration that your peace is precious, your dignity is non-negotiable, and your happiness is worthy of protection, even when that protection requires the difficult courage to walk away from those who no longer honor your presence. The people who surround you have a remarkable influence on the quality of your life. Their words, attitudes, habits, and energy gradually shape the way you see yourself and the world around you. This is why the difference between the right people and the wrong people is so significant. The right people nourish your spirit. They encourage your growth, celebrate your victories without jealousy, and remain beside you during moments of struggle. The wrong people, on the other hand, quietly diminish your joy. They may not always do so with harsh words or obvious cruelty. Sometimes it happens through constant negativity, subtle criticism, emotional neglect, or a lack of genuine support. Their presence slowly drains your enthusiasm until you begin to forget what it feels like to be truly at peace. Healthy relationships create an environment where you feel safe to be yourself. You do not have to hide your thoughts, pretend to be someone you are not, or constantly fear being judged. The right people make you feel accepted even when you are imperfect. They inspire confidence by reminding you of your strengths rather than magnifying your weaknesses. They listen without rushing to criticize, offer advice without trying to control your choices, and encourage your dreams even when they are different from their own. Their support becomes a quiet source of strength, helping you face life's challenges with greater courage and hope. In contrast, the wrong people often create emotional uncertainty. You never quite know where you stand with them. One day they are encouraging, and the next they are distant or dismissive. Their approval feels conditional, making you work harder just to earn the kindness that should come naturally in a caring relationship. Over time, this unpredictability creates anxiety. Instead of feeling relaxed in their presence, you become overly cautious. You think carefully before speaking, worry about saying the wrong thing, and constantly adjust your behavior to avoid conflict. What should be a source of comfort becomes a source of emotional exhaustion. The right people also challenge you, but they do so with love and respect. They want to see you become wiser, stronger, and more fulfilled. When they point out your mistakes, it is never to embarrass or discourage you. It is because they genuinely believe in your potential. Their honesty is paired with compassion, making it easier to learn and grow. The wrong people, however, often use criticism to weaken your confidence rather than strengthen your character. They focus on your failures while ignoring your progress. Instead of inspiring growth, they create self-doubt that follows you into every area of your life. Joy flourishes where appreciation exists. The people who truly value you notice your efforts, express gratitude for your presence, and recognize the unique qualities you bring into their lives. They do not make you feel invisible. Even during disagreements, they treat you with dignity and kindness because respect remains constant, regardless of circumstances. These relationships become places where laughter comes easily, conversations feel meaningful, and silence is comfortable rather than awkward. They remind you that genuine connection does not require endless sacrifice or emotional struggle. Recognizing the difference between those who nourish your spirit and those who quietly diminish it is one of the most valuable lessons you can learn. It allows you to invest your time, energy, and love where they will be appreciated instead of wasted. As you become more intentional about the company you keep, your confidence grows stronger, your peace becomes more consistent, and your happiness begins to feel less like a distant goal and more like the natural result of surrounding yourself with people who genuinely want to see you thrive, succeed, and become the fullest version of yourself without asking you to shrink your light to make them feel more comfortable. Healing rarely begins while we are still clinging to the very relationships that continue to wound us. It starts when we make the difficult decision to place our own well-being above unhealthy attachments. This choice is not made because we have stopped caring about someone else. Instead, it is made because we have finally started caring for ourselves. Many people remain connected to relationships that bring more pain than peace because they fear loneliness, guilt, or uncertainty. They believe that holding on is safer than letting go. Yet the truth is that no relationship should require you to sacrifice your emotional health in order to preserve it. Lasting happiness cannot grow in an environment where your heart is constantly burdened by disappointment and emotional exhaustion. One of the greatest misconceptions about healing is that it happens automatically with time. While time plays an important role, true healing also requires intentional choices. If you continue exposing yourself to the same harmful patterns, the same broken promises, and the same emotional wounds, time alone cannot restore your peace. Healing begins the moment you interrupt those patterns. It begins when you stop chasing people who repeatedly walk away. Stop explaining your worth to those determined not to see it, and stop carrying responsibilities that were never yours to bear. Every healthy boundary you establish creates space for your heart to recover from burdens it was never meant to carry forever. Choosing your own well-being often feels uncomfortable at first because many people have been taught that putting themselves first is selfish. They grow up believing that they must always please others, avoid conflict, and keep everyone happy regardless of the personal cost. As a result, they ignore their own needs until exhaustion becomes normal. However, there is a profound difference between selfishness and self-care. Selfishness ignores the needs of others for personal gain. Self-care acknowledges that your own emotional, mental, and physical health deserve attention too. You cannot continually pour strength, patience, and compassion into others while leaving yourself completely emptied. Healing also requires accepting that not everyone will understand your decision. Some people become uncomfortable when you establish boundaries because those boundaries remove the access they once had to your energy and attention. They may accuse you of changing or becoming distant. In reality, you are not becoming a different person. You are becoming a healthier one. Growth naturally changes the way you respond to unhealthy behavior. What you once tolerated out of fear or insecurity no longer feels acceptable because your understanding of your own worth has deepened. As your healing progresses, you begin to notice subtle but meaningful changes within yourself. The constant anxiety that once followed you starts to fade. Your thoughts become clearer because they are no longer consumed by endless emotional conflict. You rediscover interests, dreams, and passions that had been pushed aside while trying to maintain unhealthy relationships. Your confidence slowly returns because it is no longer dependent on the approval of people who never truly appreciated you. Instead of waking each day with emotional heaviness, you begin to experience moments of gratitude, hope, and genuine peace. Perhaps the most beautiful part of choosing your own well-being is that it changes the standard by which you build future relationships. Once you experience the freedom that comes from protecting your peace, you become less willing to settle for connections built on manipulation, disrespect, or emotional instability. You learn to recognize kindness without suspicion, honesty without fear, and love without constant sacrifice. The space left behind by unhealthy attachments gradually fills with greater self-awareness, healthier friendships, deeper confidence, and a quiet inner strength that reminds you every day that the journey toward happiness truly begins. The moment you decide that your own well-being is worthy of the same care, loyalty, and compassion you have so freely given to everyone else, True happiness does not come from having a perfect life or surrounding yourself with countless people. It grows in the quiet spaces created when you establish healthy boundaries and invest in meaningful relationships. Boundaries are often misunderstood as walls that push people away, but in reality, they are bridges to healthier connections. They define how you expect to be treated and communicate what you are willing and unwilling to accept. Rather than limiting love, healthy boundaries protect it. They create relationships built on mutual respect instead of obligation, trust instead of fear, and understanding instead of manipulation. Many people hesitate to set boundaries because they worry about disappointing others. They fear being called selfish, cold, or difficult. As a result, they say yes when they want to say no, remain silent when they need to speak, and tolerate behavior that slowly damages their peace of mind. Over time, this pattern creates resentment. They become emotionally exhausted because they are constantly meeting everyone else's expectations while neglecting their own needs. Happiness cannot thrive in a life where your energy is continually given away without care or balance. Protecting your peace is not an act of rejection toward others. It is an act of respect toward yourself. Healthy boundaries also reveal the true nature of the people around you. Those who genuinely care about you may not always understand your decisions immediately, but they will respect them. They recognize that every person has emotional limits and personal needs. They appreciate honesty, even when it requires uncomfortable conversations. On the other hand, people who only benefit from your lack of boundaries often resist the moment you begin to protect yourself. They may become frustrated because they can no longer take advantage of your kindness or expect endless sacrifices without offering the same in return. This reaction is often a clear indication of the role they expected you to play in their lives. Meaningful relationships are built on reciprocity. They are not measured by how long you have known someone, but by how consistently they contribute to your well-being. In these relationships, support flows in both directions. You celebrate one another's successes without jealousy, offer encouragement during difficult seasons, and create an atmosphere where honesty feels safe. There is no constant competition for attention or affection. Instead, there is a quiet confidence that both people value each other's presence. Such relationships become a source of strength because they allow you to grow without fear of being judged or diminished. When your life is filled with healthy relationships, happiness becomes more stable because it is no longer dependent on constant approval or validation. You begin to understand that your worth does not increase or decrease according to someone else's opinion. This realization frees you from the exhausting cycle of trying to please everyone. Instead, you focus on nurturing the connections that bring out your best qualities while gently releasing those that repeatedly drain your spirit. The quality of your relationships becomes far more important than the quantity. Boundaries also deepen your relationship with yourself. They teach you to listen to your emotions instead of ignoring them. They encourage you to honor your values, even when doing so is difficult. Every time you protect your time, your peace, or your emotional health, you reinforce the belief that your life has value. This inner respect gradually transforms the way you approach every aspect of life. Decisions become clearer, confidence becomes stronger, and fear loses much of its control because you know that your happiness is no longer built on keeping everyone else satisfied. The secret to lasting happiness is not found in chasing acceptance from every person you meet, but in creating a life where love is balanced with respect, kindness is balanced with wisdom, and generosity is balanced with healthy limits. As you surround yourself with people who inspire trust, celebrate your growth, and honor your boundaries, you discover that genuine joy flourishes naturally in relationships where both hearts are free to give without losing themselves, and where peace is protected as carefully as love itself.